I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it there. So let me stop share. Yeah. Okay. Hi, good morning. Good morning. Yes. I believe this is our third lecture. The fourth, eh? Third, yes. Okay. Can you hear me? Yes, we have a lot of ground to cover this morning. So I'll be a bit faster. Why is this thing not working? Unfortunately, at the beginning, a lot of things seem not to be working in our favor. The pointer is not working. Okay, so we are going to be looking at literature review in business. The one important thing about today's lecture is that whether you are doing MPhil or you are doing PhD, you are going to be engaged in this exercise throughout the 2 years. That is why we need to spend a lot of time exhausting a lot of things in this lecture. Check the other classrooms. You will find a chair, you will bring it. Yes. So if you have your laptop here, fine. Because as part of the things we are going to be doing, there are some few practical things we'll try to put across. So at the initial parts, I will be a bit faster, just to drive home some concepts I think you need to understand. So most importantly, this lecture would, by the end of this lecture, we should be able to clarify why it is important that we do literature reviews. And then we'll see how those of us, well, we are all in business and management, how we conduct literature. We should conduct literature review in business management. And then we'll see possibly if we can pick up some skills today in terms of how we should go about conducting our literature review. Okay. So I'm not going to emphasize a lot on the importance of literature review because that would slow us down a bit. Now, I also want to emphasize that the slides for this lecture are prepared in a way that would serve as a guide for you throughout your MPhil or PhD journey. So a lot of the things that are discussed or presented or captured in the slides, we may not thoroughly look at it, but it will serve as a guide for you when you are reading. So we have about 60 slides, and we can go through 60 slides here thoroughly. So bear with me. So the importance, whatever we are going to be doing in terms of our research, literature review forms a critical foundation for us. Whether you are going to be doing a paper-based thesis or just a monograph, you cannot do it without a literature review. So the literature review serves as a critical foundation for all of us. The literature review also provides a context for whatever we are going to be doing. Whatever phenomena you are looking at, it is the literature review that will properly situate the phenomena you are studying in a proper context. So the literature review you do, we also have to emphasize that it is completely different from the literature review from what you would do when you are generating ideas for a research topic. In our past lectures, we have emphasized that for you to come up with a research topic, you must have generated some ideas. As part of firming up your ideas, we discussed that you can do some concept mapping, or you can do some preliminary literature review. Now, the preliminary literature review you will do would be a cursory look at the literature, just to find out some few hints about what you want to look at. That is completely different from the literature review we are going to discuss today. What we are going to discuss today is a critical literature review, not a preliminary literature review. So maybe someone says he wants to look at the nexus between financial development and economic growth. And you just go to Google Scholar and you look at papers that have looked at this. You are just doing a preliminary search. That is not a literature review. What we want to do here is a comprehensive and an extensive exercise. So it is the literature review that will properly contextualize what you want to look at. It will also inform your methodology in a way. Remember, we gave hints last week that there are a number of things that will inform whether you are going qualitative, quantitative, or mixed. The way your literature review is conducted will also, in a way, inform how you are going to, the methodology you are going to approach. When we look at the different types of literature reviews, we would be able to appreciate this point better. So largely in business and management, literature reviews help us in decision making. So for you as academics, it is when you have conducted a literature review that you can decide that you want to limit your literature to only 5 years. You want to consider paper A or paper B. So it helps you a lot in decision making. It also would help you in your theory development, because you are going to, if your work is going to extend a particular theory, or your work is going to apply a theory in a novel way, you cannot do that without knowing what existing literature has, what existing literature we have on that particular theory. So you need to also do a literature review to help in your theory development. Then there are some other applications, practical applications. For those of us who are working in academia, doing literature review is a practical, it's something we do every day. Now, I want to find out, assuming you are asked what a literature review is, based on these preliminary remarks, what would you say is a literature review? What would you say is a literature? The battery. What would you say is a literature review? Based on what I just said. I try to distinguish between a preliminary literature search and the kind of literature review we are going to be talking about today. So looking at the kind of literature review we want to be doing from now on, how would you describe what a literature review is? What's a literature review? Please talk. Yes. Okay, serves as a foundation. That looks more or less to me like a purpose. Also, so what is it? Like a purpose. You are right, but that's a purpose. And there are several ways you can always answer a question. Yes. Okay. He says, you see, I'm stopping him in his track. He says it's systematic analysis or systematic review. Honestly, he's right. But that is just an aspect. He's just explaining a type of literature review, which we'll see soon. So you are all right. But understand that, yes. Okay. So trying to find some evidence to back some assumptions. I mentioned some keywords not long ago when I was trying to distinguish between preliminary and what? A critical. So literature review, what we are going to look at today is a critical examination of what? The literature. And this review we are talking about should be very, very comprehensive and critical. And that involves what Mr. Hardy is saying. Comprehensive critical analysis of existing research and scholarship on a specific topic. We have looked at why we want to be doing it, but specifically, we want to identify some gaps, we want to identify some trends, and maybe contributions others have made Most often than not, in identifying the gaps, our major focus would be to problematize what others have done. That's how our gaps will come out clearly. Okay, so let me skip this a bit. I already indicated that it will serve as a foundation for our the design of our research, the methodology, and the theoretical framework. Now, the types of literature review. What are the types? Some of you may have heard this, systematic review. And that's what Mr. Hardy was mentioning. Systematic review. What does it involve? It's a very rigorous procedure, and it involves a systematic and structured approach to analyzing the literature. Why are we going to be doing that? To provide unbiased and comprehensive overview of existing evidence. For me, the catchphrase here is existing evidence. So one type of literature review would be a systematic review. Another type would be a narrative review. Now, for a narrative review, we want to tell a story in a holistic way. So telling the story may not follow a very rigorous approach. Now, there's a difference between following a rigorous approach in a systematic review and providing a holistic narrative by focusing on telling a story. Now, when we're going to tell a story, most often than not, telling a story involves some level of what? Subjectivity. Do you agree with me? When you are telling a story, it involves a level of subjectivity. But if I'm going to do a scientific systematic review, it means that the processes I am going to follow to conduct the review, if somebody else follows that systematic approach, he should arrive at my findings. But if I do a narrative review, and someone is also going to do a narrative review, our conclusions may differ because of the elements of what? Subjectivity that we will get here, and the element of what? Objectivity we will get here. Alternatively, we can have a third type, a meta-analysis. And this one involves a quantitative analysis of the literature by comparing results from different studies. In explaining that, I want to find out, have you ever seen a literature review publication or a literature review paper where there are a lot of graphs indicating how many papers adopted a qualitative approach, how many papers adopted quantitative, how many papers adopted a particular theory, and how many papers adopted another theory? Or a graph indicating how many papers were published in 2010, how many, and it's some kind of a trend of how publications regarding this particular subject area has been done over the years. Have you come across something like that? That would be a meta-analysis. So we have three types of literature reviews. Three types. When we are doing our MPhil thesis or PhD, we have to be very specific about the type of review we are doing. And as we go on, we will all understand the specific type of review which will be relevant for an MPhil or a PhD. That is not to say that some are relevant and some are not. Sometimes it depends on your supervisor. Your supervisor may say that, well, I want you to conduct this particular kind of review first before you proceed. And we indicating that especially for the PhD, that your thesis would be publication-based, paper-based. It means that your supervisor you can even agree with your supervisor that your first paper would be a critical synthesis of the literature by adopting what? A systematic review. Then when you have identified your gaps, the rest of the papers will go to addressing the gaps. So it depends on you and your supervisor. Now, a quick, how are they relevant? In terms of a systematic review, it is ideal for evidence-based decision-making in managerial context. And most often than not, our emphasis would be to try to synthesize empirical studies to inform the phenomena we are looking at. For a narrative review, mostly those who are going to be embarking on qualitative studies would find themselves here. If you are going to be conducting some exploratory study, you may find yourself here. And for meta-analysis, for those who are in quantitatively biased fields, they are likely to find themselves here. Now, whether we want to adopt a systematic narrative or meta-analysis review, what are the critical components of a literature review we must consider? So let's look at one after the other. The first one is setting the context and scope of your literature review. So if you are an MPhil student, any of you, if you are going to conduct your literature review, it is important that the context within which the review is going to be done is clearly set and your scope clearly set. How do you set the scope? First, you may have a supervisory session with your supervisor, and your supervisor will tell you that, for me, I don't think you should consider literature beyond 10 years. He's defining your scope. He can tell you only literature up to 5 years should be considered for a literature review. It will mean that some timeline has been what? Has been drawn for you. You may also sit down and decide with your supervisor which keywords you should use to look for the literature. In that case, we can say that some kind of scope is also what? Is also being set. So if you are going to conduct literature review, you just don't start your literature review. You ask for a supervisory session with your supervisor so that you can properly set the context for the review and the scope. If you don't do this, you spend a lot of time doing your literature review, and when you submit it, your supervisor will just rule through a lot of pages saying that this is not relevant, this is not relevant, because the scope was not what? Properly set. In setting the scope, 3 things are very critical. The context. Remember, you are going to be looking at a phenomenon. All of you are going to be looking at different phenomena. The context is very important. Setting the boundaries for that particular phenomenon in the literature is very important. Then the scope definition, as I have indicated, you sit with your supervisor and agree on which keywords you should use, which keywords you should not use at all, and then the objectives of the literature review. So the objective of the literature review may differ depending on what you want to do. So setting the objectives is very, very important. Then the second one is the theoretical framework, establishing a theoretical foundation, and that also involves a number of things. I want us to spend some time looking at setting the methodology for your literature review. Setting the methodology for the literature review. So don't confuse the methodology for your literature review with the methodology for your thesis. These are 2 different things. Okay. So let's see what it will involve. The methodology for a literature review will involve your search strategy. How are you going to go about looking for the literature? For this one too, you may need to sit and discuss with your supervisor, if your supervisor has the time. Apart from that, so in terms of the search strategy, you sit with your supervisor and decide what kind of databases are you going to be consulting? Which databases are you going to be consulting? What keywords should you use? So for instance, assuming your topic, somebody should give us a topic, tentative topic, so that we use as an example. The rule of internal, yes, auditors. In minimizing risk management. Okay. Please don't find anything wrong with the topic. We are using it for an exercise. So the role of internal auditors in minimizing risk management. So you have to remember that when you get to, before you can get to literature review, you would have settled on this with your supervisor. So you now go to meet your supervisor. I want to start literature review and I need a meeting. And interestingly, some of you will go through this exercise. Your supervisor, especially for a PhD, your supervisor will not call you to meet. You would have to call a meeting. Oh, yes. And you drive the meeting. So you want to meet your supervisor and you want to discuss your literature review, how you are going to go about your literature review. So you go, okay, tentative title or topic is this. And I was thinking that we could discuss my search strategy, the keywords I should use. Your supervisor will just say, okay, what do you think? What do you think would be your keywords given this? Internal auditors, risk management. Remember that this is a very simplified topic, right? What else? It says minimize. What else? Internal controls. Yes, I'm happy about the answers I'm getting. Minimizing cannot be a keyword. Internal controls cannot be a keyword because internal control is not explicitly stated here. So the moment you include words like internal control and inherent meanings of some of the terms here, you are going to be what? Expanding the scope of your review. And you may get millions and millions of results. You'll be confused. So the more specific you are according to your topic, the better the scope for you. So our keywords would be internal auditors, risk management. If I'm not getting anything about internal auditors, I can use internal audit. Are you getting it? Risk management. If I'm not getting anything about risk management, I can use just what? Risk. But to use management, my scope would be too huge. Are you getting it? Even if I'm going to use risk, I have to use it in a particular context alongside another keyword. And when I'm using the keyword search as part of my search strategy, I am not going to be using them individually. So I cannot just go start looking for internal auditors because the domain where I'm trying to situate internal auditors may be widened if I just go looking for. So remember, if you look at this topic carefully, context is missing. Do you understand? There's no context here. So assuming the context was maybe educational, higher education institutions, then the context would have also been a critical keyword. So that when I'm making my permutations and searching, I will be careful about what? The context. Otherwise, I can open it up to other contexts. So agreeing on this with your supervisor is very important. You also have to agree with your supervisor what databases you are going to use. Most often than not, the agreement on this is always left to the students. Your supervisor will tell you look for any database that is relevant in what? Business and money. And we'll look at some of the databases. Now, your selection criteria. You have to explain the criteria you are going to use for including some particular studies and excluding some other studies. So if context was clearly defined here, and I was looking at the phenomena in a higher educational context, it means that if I come across papers in other contexts, I may not necessarily consider them. But it is also possible that when I define my scope, and the scope is so specific and narrow, I am not getting any literature. What will you suggest I do? So for instance, the context is higher education institutions. So I do my permutations, internal auditors, risk management plus higher education institutions, and I'm not getting anything, or maybe I just get one paper. I do it within 5 years, one paper, within 10 years, maybe 2 papers. I may decide to widen the scope by removing the context. So it is not cast in stone that the context should always be too specific. Now, for some of these tricks, you would only learn it through what? Through practice. Okay? Then data extraction. You will have to describe how relevant information is extracted and organized during the review process. You will have to group whatever you are extracting. You will have to group them. And to group them as part of the extraction process, it is easier if you know how to use a reference manager. And for reference managers, I will later explain some of them. If you know how to use Mendeley, if you know how to use Zotero, or if you know how to use EndNote. Please don't be confused. Yes, by the end of the trimester, you will understand some of these things. Okay. Then the fourth thing, evaluating and synthesizing existing studies. In fact, looking for the literature is one thing. Evaluating and synthesizing them is another very difficult task. This is where the actual reading would have to take place. Critical evaluation of the literature, synthesizing them, and then identifying patterns. This basically involves reading and reading and reading. Okay? Then, yes. The approach, okay. The methodology, okay, yes. Okay, so what's an empirical review and what's a theoretical review? So first, we need to understand what these two mean. What is an empirical review? What is a theoretical review? Can you ask your question again? Eh? No, you ask it. I want you to ask it again. The methodology in the literature review. Okay, and I'm throwing a question back. What's a theoretical review? What's a theoretical review? And what is an empirical review? Yes. Yes. Okay. Mzazi's hand is up. Okay. 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 Are you guys following? These two are different types of reviews. I'm not sure if it's the MPhil class. We looked at theory. Is it the MPhil class? No. It's the PhD class. For the PhD, well, so I don't know how I'm going to make this simple. For the PhD class, we indicated that the role of theory in your research is very, very important. And there are several different kinds of theory. So for you to apply or decide that you want to use a specific theory in your thesis, you must have done some kind of a review of theories that have been applied in examining the phenomena you are looking at. So if you are going to do a theoretical review, or you are just going to do the traditional literature reviews we know, documenting the methodology depends on the type of review. And how many types of review did we look at? 3. Now, if I'm going to do a thesis, I'm just doing a thesis, I don't have to document the methodology of the review in the thesis. But if I'm going to do a review paper, which will be published as a standalone paper, then I have to document the methodology for the review. So take this from me. The methodology of the review should not be captured in your thesis. How you went about, the keywords you used, how you selected the items, the timeline you used, the scope and the context should not be part of your thesis. Do you understand? But if I'm doing a standard, so I'm doing PhD and I have to publish a paper and I'm doing a review paper. In the review paper, I have to indicate the methodology of the review. Do you understand the difference? So now let's come to this. If I'm doing a paper to publish, and the paper is reviewing the application of theories in explaining a particular phenomena, the paper will be a review paper, though theoretical. I will have to include the methodology. If I'm doing an empirical review, and it is going to be a standalone paper, publishable, I have to include the methodology of the review. But if I'm doing any of this in my thesis, and remember, those, especially for the MPhil, you'll be doing just traditional literature review. You also look at a theory and how you are going to apply it. So you do a brief literature about a theory. You also do some brief empirical review. There is no need at all for you to go about explaining how you came about with the literature, how many years you considered, and the scope. But if it's going to be a standalone paper, then you have to document that. Does that explain your? Okay. Any other question? Yes. Okay. You are doing Okay. Oh, yes, yes, yes. For those who don't understand his question, you have a set criteria and you have come up with maybe 20 papers, which you are using for the systematic literature review. Now, in your synthesis of the literature, is it permissible for you to draw on other papers outside the 20? Remember, the 20 papers you would have gathered, if I want to put it more bluntly, is your data. Those 20 papers will be your data. Now, you can rely on other papers to explain the synthesis of the 20 papers. I don't know if you understand. So in your methodology, you will indicate how you came about the 20 papers. But any additional paper you are going to be relying on to explain the synthesis, you will not be adding it. Do you understand? Are people confused? Let's proceed. That is why I said that this is a guide, and you will need this resource throughout your study. Okay. And then, so after the synthesis, your literature review will conclude. Now, what I've just looked at basically presents the format for a literature review paper. For instance, if you look at, if you start from 1, 2, 3, and then you have the synthesis as a fourth one, and the conclusion. That is a generic outline of a literature review paper, which some majority of the PhD students will be doing. For the MPhil, please relax. Yes. Okay. All right. Now, the search strategies. The search. So for the MPhil, what I just need you to remember so that we can go on very well is that there are 3 types of reviews. Whichever review you are going to do, whether systematic, narrative, or meta, you need a search what? Strategy. So let's pick it from that angle. You need a search strategy. The first thing in your search strategy will be to identify the databases you are going to be using to look for the literature. When we say literature, we mean the papers you are going to be using, the book chapters, the conference papers, the books. That's what we mean by the literature. So which databases are you going to use? You'll be asking yourself, because I know there are many of you here, you don't know a single database. We hope that, yes, we hope that by the end of the lecture, at least you know that, okay, in business, these are the databases I can rely on if I'm looking for data. So that when you are looking, you want to do a preliminary search or you want to do a literature review, you want to do this because we don't want you to go typing things into Google, normal Google, and just searching for things and downloading. No. That's not what we are supposed to do. That's why we are doing this. So that we need the databases, the keywords you are going to use, how are you going to do that? And then we are going to be looking at a third component of our search strategy, citation tracking. What do we mean by citation tracking? So let's look at the databases quickly. Anybody here who has, so I'm just going to list them. Later on, you can Google them when you get the slides. So the most common ones, ABI Inform. If you have not heard of ABI Inform, ABI stands for Abstracted Business Information. Then ProQuest usually goes with ProQuest. Then we also have Business Source Complete, hosted by F School. Then we also have Scopus. All of this in business, we can use them. Don't write it. I'll give it after the lecture. I'll share the slides. So let's just follow. These are just a list of names of databases you can use. Then we have JSTOR, Science Direct. Have you heard of Science Direct? Very popular. Emerald Insight, Springer, Wiley, Taylor and Francis, and the one everybody here has heard of, Google Scholar. Yes, but if you look at almost all of them, majority are publishing houses. So the database a database, but they also what? Publish. Apart from what? Google Scholar. Google Scholar is just an indexing engine. They don't publish. So whatever we would find in Emerald, Springer, and whatnot, we can equally do what? Find it in what? Google Scholar. That is why Google Scholar is so important. And your understanding of how you can leverage on some key skills in terms of using Google Scholar is very important, because all of what we have talked about can be found what? In the Google Scholar database, and we'll see how. So the second, we mentioned 3 strategies, right? Databases, keywords, and citation tracking. So as we are going on, you realize that literature review class like this one, we will not actually teach you how to read. We are going through how you can get the reading material for you to be able to do the reading. Okay, so keywords. So in terms of keywords, identifying the main concepts, you have to clearly define the main concept related to your research. Look at your topic, and you will find the main concepts there. If you don't find the main concepts, you will find the main concepts there. Let me know if you will find it there. But you can also rely on what? Synonyms and variations. Internal audit, internal auditor. Risk management, maybe risk control, something. Look at some synonyms and see how that can help you. Then we have to use control vocabulary. Control vocabulary. Explore the control vocabulary or subject heading used by the database you are searching. For the keywords, there are some databases. Whilst you are searching, on the sidebar, you will see they have also identified some keywords in the database. So for instance, the information system guys use a particular library, AIS library. If you search for anything like this term, for many of the databases, if you just copy your title and you search and check on the left, you are likely to see that the database has also listed some keywords. You didn't define the keywords. They would have some keywords. That's what we are referring to as controlled vocabulary. And I will demonstrate how you can use that later on practically, if we have time. Okay, so you can then combine the keywords in different ways using what we refer to as Boolean operators. This one too, practically, we'll see how we're going to do that. So for instance, role of internal auditors in minimizing risk management. So if I go to Google Scholar, which everyone is familiar with, and I'm searching for literature, the use of the Boolean operators would work this way. I will pick the internal auditors and I will add this and I will add what? The other keyword, risk management. Alternatively, I can just, instead of using and, I can just use plus as a Boolean operator. And very soon we'll see what it can give me. Let me use this. So for instance, if I'm using internal auditors and the Boolean operator and, basically what is and risk management, basically what the results I will get will be very narrow. It will narrow the search. And only articles containing risk management and internal auditors would come. If I use the Boolean operator and, it will narrow the search. And only articles containing the keywords will be presented to me. I can also use or, and it will widen the search. So I can say internal auditors or risk management. So you see that if I come up with variations like internal control, I can use internal auditors or internal auditors or internal audit and risk management. In that case, at some point, it widens my search, but the Boolean operator and also does what? Also narrows my search. And this we'll see how we can use that in Google Scholar. Then we also have not. So I could also, so for instance, I could use a search criteria. I could have a search criteria like this: internal auditors, and then I'll add not, and then add the word I don't want the search engine to look for completely. So when I add not, I'm excluding terms from the search. So in this particular example, recruitment, not selection. It will only give me articles containing recruitment. But if selection is part of it, I won't get the results. And so on and so forth. Then we also have what we refer to as truncation. Here we'll use, for instance, if you look at this word, motivation. Motivation could have, we can derive some words from it. We can have motivate, motivated. What else? Motivational. But they all will contain the word motivate, and then I'll put asterisks. When I do that, it means that words that start with this motivate, whether it is motivational, motivated, whatever, it would give me this. What does it do? Does it widen the search or limits it? Or widen it? Then I can also use what is called a wildcard. You know, some words like labor. Labor. The Americans will spell it as L-A-B-O-R. The British will spell it L-A-B-O-U-R. So if my keywords include labor, the English word, the British word labor, that means if there are articles containing the American labor, it won't come. I'm getting it. So I have to use a wildcard to pick up the other variations. And I have to eliminate the word that creates the letter that creates a variation and replace it with a question mark, and then it will return both results. Okay. So as I indicated, this is a guide. Okay. Then you can also consider subject specific. Okay. Now let's look at citation tracking. Let's look at citation tracking. Anybody here who has seen a journal paper before? A journal publication before? Please don't be scared. I know some of you are thinking, oh, MPhil, I've put myself in trouble. Relax. The beginning of everything is like that. You will pick up. Anybody who has seen a journal publication, article? Yes. What is the last thing you see when you get a journal? Yeah, the references. So if you pick a journal paper and look at the references, it means that the author consulted all those papers in order to write the paper. Is that not it? So it means that he considered, based on his search criteria and strategy, these were the relevant papers. So it means that if you are going to write something that is going to rely on that paper, it means that it's most probable that the papers he relied on, you also need it. So you also go and look at it. You are tracking the citations. Now, if the paper was published a couple of years ago, it is possible that other academics would have also relied on the paper you are holding forward. So you also have to look for the other papers from when the paper was published that cited the paper. So we're looking at two things here: backward and what? And forward. Basically, that's what citation tracking involves. So someone will say, oh, me, I'm not finding literature, but there's this one paper he has found, and the paper has been cited 1,000 times. What does it tell you? Is that so? So it means other 1,000 papers. So it's most likely that if you follow those 1,000 papers, you will get what you want. Now you follow the 1,000 papers and you realize that 2 out of the 1,000 are relevant to what you are looking at. Your citation tracking will not end there. Go and look at the other papers. That also. So you can do that when you are doing a literature review. It is through citation tracking that your literature review can become very, very recent and contemporary, because you will track it to the present. Are you getting it? So it's funny when you do literature review, because usually that is your second chapter. And by the time you are submitting, for some of you, you will do your literature review, maybe MPhil first trimester, year 2, and you are submitting at the end of the year, December. By that time, maybe some other 50 papers are in. So how are you going to incorporate this? For an MPhil, maybe they may let you go. But for a PhD, when you come to do your defense, the external examiner may ask you, are you aware of this paper? Yes, but you have submitted. So there are two things. When you are about to submit, and when you have submitted and you are doing your viva, that there can be a very big disconnect, and an external examiner can just throw you off balance. So you have to find a way to keep up to date. When you are about to submit, look at the literature again. But there are ways which we will look at. There are ways you can keep track of the papers that are published in that area by getting alerts from Google Scholar. Anytime a paper is indexed and is related to that, you get an email. And then you can go and look it up, do a bit of search, and then update. But when you have submitted, and you're about to do your defense, the external is not coming. You are praying, the external is not coming. 6 months, external has come. And you carry the old literature and go. You may be in trouble. So you may just need to do what? Use the same citation tracking and update yourself and go in. So that when the external examiner says that, oh, are you aware of this thing that was recently published? Because the tendency is that by the time you are doing your viva, someone has done your work. And they will ask you, are you aware that what you are presenting, someone has just done the same thing? You should be confident to tell them that, yes, I'm aware, but he didn't do A, B, C. And that's how my work is what. If you don't know this, you'll be in serious trouble. Okay. So citation tracking done. We'll look at practically how we can look at that. It is only through citation tracking that, and this goes to the, oh, sorry. What happened? I think my Zoom is open. You can, I'm not seeing the, yeah, so just a minute, we are offline. Okay, but why did it? Hmm? I should. Screen is gone blank. Okay. I'm not seeing anything. I'm not even seeing anything on my screen. I wasn't aware. Those all right, can you see now? You can see. Okay, let's continue. Let's continue. So it is only through citation tracking that you can identify what we mean by a seminal work. And a seminal work are papers that are foundational papers to whatever you are looking at. So if you are looking at internal auditors and risk management, it means that there must be some papers you cannot exclude when you are discussing internal audit. There are academics, it's like discussing a marketing strategy and not mentioning Philip Kotler. Is it Michael Porter? Yeah, the big guys. So they have papers that serve as foundational papers. It is only through citation tracking that you can get them. Because the papers are foundational, they are cited so many times. So if you look at the number of citations, and we look at how you can find the number of citations on Google Scholar, then you know that, this paper is critical. Then it can guide you to what? Other seminal work. So the easier way to do that is to look at the reference list and also look at papers that have what cited the paper in the future. So it will help you to find influential foundational papers, and then it will also help you discover more recent what? More recent work. Yes. They'll be old. Yes. How far back can you? So you agree with your supervisor that we should limit the search to 10 years. And now citation tracking is pointing you to a paper 50 years ago. It's allowable. Seminar papers, theory papers, and sometimes philosophy papers. Beyond the scope, you have to rely on them. You can't. There's no way you can exclude them. Yes. Will you add that to your search? If your search is 10 years, it can't be part of it because it goes beyond. But most often than well, let me be a bit careful about that. No. Okay. Yeah. So the rest, this ones, I think, is for your own consumption, critical reading and note taking. But all of that, for you to engage in critical reading and note taking, the easier way to do it will be your expertise in relying on a reference manager. We'll see that. Yes. Okay. Okay. Assuming that. Okay. Yeah. You have to remember that for a foundation or a seminal paper, for instance, let's take Jensen and McLean agency. There's no way you can discuss agency without that paper, 1976 or whatever. Now you go back, look at papers prior to 1976. And then you also look at 1976 till date. No, so remember that this one is about theory. But the application of that seminal paper, the theory, the agency theory, can be in several domains or areas. It can be cited in medicine. It can be cited in psychology. It can be cited in economics, information systems. What are you looking at? Are you in economics or psychology? That will be what will narrow your search in terms of your use of the foundational or seminal paper. So it ends. So if the paper is published 2022 and 100 papers have relied on it, forward, it doesn't mean that all the 100 papers are relevant to you. They may be looking at different papers, but the ideas from the foundational paper is what they are also drawing on. So you will now try to find that linkage between the phenomena and probably if somebody has also looked at a similar phenomena, relying on the foundation, then you take that one. Do you understand? So based on your search criteria, you can limit that very, very well. Now, you have found the papers, you have downloaded the papers, you have read the papers. When you are writing, you have to cite them. Yes.
getting work that people have done already, and maybe like we've gotten ideas from it, but not necessarily taking like information or sentences
out of it.
Is it a must to cite them, or
It's very, very tricky one. He says you have read a paper. You have not actually picked a sentence from it, but you have picked an idea from it. In fact, it is not a sentence you are citing. It is what? The idea. That is why, so if you are citing that, so there's a difference. And this is what makes your question very, very important. Assuming I pick a sentence from ATA A, and I want to put it in my work, I can quote, there are so many ways I can quote the ATA, right? Put it in quotation marks. There's no way I can escape the citation, right? But in the second example, which I believe is relevant to what you are saying, I'm not quoting the person, but the idea. So if I'm not quoting, I have to do what? Paraphrase. But the idea is still inherent in the paraphrase sentence. You still have to cite. You get that? You still have to cite. In fact, these days, it has been made very, very easier, right? Very easy. Okay. Yeah, so that draws me to my next point. Now you want to cite it. How do you go about citing it? In all business schools, we use a particular citation style, APA, right? So different citation styles. We have APA, American Psychological Association, MLA, Modern Language Association, and Chicago Manual. But we are going to be using what? This one. However, if you are going to send a paper from your thesis to a conference or to a journal, the journal may require that you use a specific citation style. It means that if you had written your paper based on APA, you have to do what? Change it all over to what? MLA, MLA, or Chicago Manual. And if you are using a reference manager, it won't take you more than 30 seconds to change that. You just click and to change it. But if you are going to do well, nobody does that. Well, some people do. Yes, and I know somebody, one of my colleagues, a very prolific writer. He doesn't use a reference manager. He has used the manual type to the extent that he's so faster with the manual than using a reference manager. Yes. He's teaching you guys too. It has been made much more easier these days. Even if you have found the reference in Google Scholar, there's a button in Google Scholar you will just click, and it will give you the citation in MLA, APA, Chicago, Harvard, Vancouver. So what you will just do is to click and copy and go and paste. Even if you are not using a citation manager, and we'll look at this one too, even if you are not using a citation manager, you can easily get it. So these days, we don't spend time explaining that if you are going to use APA, it must be ATA. This. No. Nobody has time to do that because the reference manager will do it for you. But you need to understand how it works. Okay, so I think now I would want to demonstrate some few things. But yes, we'll look at that. In-text citation. He asked a question about in-text citation. What I mentioned basically referred to your citations at the end of what? Your work. Because we're talking about citation tracking. Now the question he asked, you have paraphrased, you have quoted an ATA or ATES. How are you going to cite it? I was going to skip that because when we go through the reference manager, it helps you do that. But for your in-text, inside the manuscript, how you cite depends on what you are communicating. So for instance, if my in-text citation is going to be within a sentence, the way I'm going to cite the ATES is different from if I'm going to start the sentence with the name of the ATA. It also depends on if I am starting at the beginning or in the middle, and the others are more than one. Are you getting it? It depends. What I would emphasize is if I'm starting the citation with the name of the author, then the easiest way I always explain this is read the sentence. And if reading the sentence means that you have to mention the author's name, then the author's name should not be in brackets. So for instance, if I am going to write that according to Jacob, and I'm going to read this sentence according to Jacob, blah, 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 then it means Jacob should not be in brackets. So it is only the year that would be in brackets. But if I was going to attribute the whole of this to Jacob at the end, sorry. Now, if I'm going to read it, role of internal auditors in minimizing risk management, Jacob 1999, it never sounds well. And it's never left out of the brackets. Do you understand? So very soon, you will witness a lot of presentations from the graduate school where people are doing their PhD, Viva, their MPhil presentations or MCOM or whatever, and they keep mentioning the role of internal auditors in risk management, Jacob, 1999. Meanwhile, it is at the end. And mostly the moment they start doing that, you see the academics bowing their heads down and hitting their heads, thinking that this is boring. Because if you look at the way the references are done, they are not supposed to be what? Mentioned. So I'll leave it at that. Now, yes. 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 Okay, I didn't complete it.
I'm not talking about it.
Yes.
I'm referring to what you said.
So I think I said it. Maybe you didn't get me. If it's at the end, or if it is cited in here, you don't mention it. But it will be, you don't mention it. Just skip it. They will see it. But if you are going to say according to, it's just like when you are even quoting or attributing something to somebody and the person's name comes according to so and so, you have to mention it. But usually when it is here, it stays silent. When you are doing a presentation, you don't mention it. Yes. Yeah. Yes. It depends. If you are saying according to Jacob and you are quoting Jacob, here we are not quoting Jacob. If you are going to say according to Jacob and you are quoting Jacob, it means that what you are quoting will be in what? Quotation marks. Not so. But as part of the name, you would also have to indicate the page number. You have to indicate the page number. If you are quoting it and it's at the end, you still have to indicate the page number. Now understand this, when you are writing, don't quote unless it is necessary. And I'll explain what, well, at some point, my undergraduate students got a trick when we gave them a Turnitin accounts to check plagiarism. Turnitin doesn't check quotations. So what they will do is they will copy thesis, complete thesis, and they will put the whole thesis in quotation marks. And they'll print it and give it to you. They will give you the soft copy. But what they will do, you know that we know the tricks. What they will do is they will highlight the quotation marks and change the font color to white. So when you print it, the quotations don't appear. When you are checking it using Turnitin, the quotations is weird. The quotations don't appear. But Turnitin will detect that they are quotes. So every paragraph quoted, they do that. And the Turnitin similarity comes out 1%, 2%, 3%, because quotations are what? Excluded. When you quote a lot, it makes your work very boring. So let's look at these practical aspects using Google Scholar. So we're going to use internal auditors and what? Risk management. Yeah, if you don't know Google Scholar, this is how the interface looks like. Now, if you search for anything on Google Scholar, this is the page you are likely going to see. This is the page you are likely going to see. So let me stop this and share my page. Muda, you are sleeping. Those online, can you see my screen? Hmm? But those here cannot see my browser. So you open, if you have your laptop, just open Google Scholar. Hmm? Yeah, so this is what I see. So I'm going to type the whole thing in, the whole topic, right? Rule. Risk. In minimizing. So this is what I get. 194,000 results. So citation tracking, let's look at that one first. If I download this paper, now if I have the links here, it means that the paper is likely downloadable. I can get it. Now, if I download the paper at the bottom, I will see the old references. But we're saying if you now look at here, can you see at the farthest end? It says cited by, can you see it? Yeah, so if we are going to track the citations forward, then it means I have 29 papers to what? To look at. So if I click on it, then these are the 29 papers. So I can't go through them individually. So I can search within only the 29 papers. So I can just search here using some keywords again here. So if it's that this paper was a seminal paper, I have to now use the context or some other keyword to limit, to find specific papers within the 29 papers. So citation tracking done. Now, if you look at, there's another button here. If I click on it, it gives me a list of the different reference formats. So if I downloaded a paper and I'm copying something from it, I'm quoting something from it, my references at the bottom. If I'm going to do it manually, I can just, we are using what? What style are we using? So if I just click here and it's highlighted and I copy it, Control C, I can copy it and go and paste it in Word. Then, now I realized that I couldn't get enough papers from the cited by. Google Scholar also gives me an opportunity to look for related papers. Yeah, so if I click on it, these papers never cited the seminal paper, but they are what? Related to it. It means they were discussing almost what? Similar. So I can also look at those papers to see. Now, if you are using Google Scholar, most likely you may have a Google account, a Gmail account. It is always good if you have a Gmail account. If your browser is signed into your Gmail account, it means that any paper you see and you click on this star, you can save this paper to your Google Scholar profile. So later you can come back and look at it. And as part of your literature management, you can use this feature. So if I click on the star, then something pops up asking me how I want to save it to my Google Scholar profile. So I have to check. For me, I have a number of folders: philosophy of IS, PhD thesis, MPhil thesis, marginalized groups in ICT education, external auditing and accountability, e-business technique. So it means I've been looking at literature involving this, and I created folders for them. These papers were for some of my MPhil students some years back, my PhD thesis, some things I was teaching, and many others. So if you are working on a topic like this, you can create a folder in your Google Scholar profile, MPhil thesis, or you can call it internal audit and risk management, so that any paper you see, this particular feature is important because when it is not always that you will go into the library with your PC and be reading. Finally, sometimes you may be in the loo. You want to download in the bathroom, toilet, and you are with your phone. And you just come across a paper. So you just click and send it there. So that when you are traveling, and your phone has a lot of battery, and you are just thinking about some concepts, you Google and you see an interesting paper. You don't download, you just click it and it saves into your Google Scholar profile, so that later when you sit up, you can synthesize your literature properly. Okay? Any question? This is quite a lot. Yes. Then there's another button. Look. Versions. So you can also see a paper and it will have several versions. It is possible that before the paper was published by a journal, the paper was a work in progress paper which was sent to a conference. Are you getting it? And the conference paper is also published and is indexed. If you click on this, you may likely see different versions of the paper. Now, let's start from the top. We started from the bottom. Look at the title of the paper, mostly in blue. The author's name are always here. One author, this is the author's name. If it is underlined, it means the author has a Google Scholar profile. And the journal name follows. And the year, and possibly a link to download it. Then you have a preview of the paper, which is in black here. Mostly, if you are using a keyword, this one, we didn't use a keyword, we use a phrase. If you are using a keyword, mostly the keyword may be highlighted in the preview. So let's go back and check something. So we want to check, maybe the keyword is activity theory. So you see that in the preview, my keyword is what? Highlighted. Now, one other way you can make very good use of keywords is when you have downloaded your literature, 10 papers, 20 papers. You pick one, you start reading. You don't have to read all the papers. You read the title. It was maybe the title or the keyword that drew you to the paper. Now, when you open the paper, use your keywords and search within that paper to see how many times they have mentioned that thing. It may just be once. And it will take you direct to where it is mentioned. You read that sentence and you realize that, This paper is not relevant. What do? Just throw it away and move on to the next paper. So you could go through 50 papers in a sitting just to make sure that these are the relevant papers, and then you now start reading them. So it means that if I download this paper, I am going to get this sentence in the paper, which says, since the mid-1980s, activity theory has been explored, blah, blah, blah. I get in here. The internationalization of activity theory is indicated. Theory of activity has been, I get in. So if I keep going, I'll see indications of how the keywords are used in the paper, which means the papers are what? Likely relevant. My concentration on the paper can also be influenced by this, especially if it is a seminar one. Okay? So we don't have time. We would have downloaded some of these papers and pulled it into a reference manager. And then from the reference manager, we will now copy, go and paraphrase it as if we are doing literature review. And then we'll use the reference manager to what? To start and see how it works. That would be a very practical session. But today our practicality will end with what? How you can use Google Scholar. But it doesn't end there. If you see this 3 bars up here, if you click on it, it gives you an idea of other things. For instance, if you go to the bottom, you will see what? Advanced search. We'll look at that. Now, before I go to the advanced search, let me show, because I'm going to minimize so that you can see. Because I maximize it, the page, some didn't show. If you look on the left-hand side, you will see that anytime is highlighted. Sort by relevance is highlighted, and edit type is highlighted. It means that this is the default criteria that Google Scholar uses to retain my resource. But I can change it. I can change it because the literature I'm looking for is not anytime. It's between 2010. So he wants to go back. That's 20-something years. So I can come to custom range, and then I'll type in 2010. And then I'll type in the next box, 2024. But if you are your supervisor, 2010 is too far. So 2020, so let's even make it 2019. And then 2024. And then I search. So when I search, you see that anytime is no longer highlighted. It's now what? Custom range. So it means I will get results for activity theory for only 2019 to 2024. I can use it to change any of them. Now, if I go to the advanced search, we mentioned what? Boolean operators. So if I come to the advanced search, it makes it easier for me to use some of them. Here, it says that you can find articles with all of the words. So anything I type here, it will give me articles with all the words inside, specific. So sometimes the way we catch some of you. Yes, I caught someone a month ago. He sent, I asked him to send a topic, the areas he was interested in. He sent 2. But the way the other one was, I suspected the other one. The good one, I suspected it. So I picked it, I went and pasted it. Hola, Jesus. Which is this? So from KNUST. So I just copied the link from KNUST and I sent it back to him. And I said, Master, we don't do this. It's not acceptable. And so I'm sorry. Okay. And I said, okay, let's change it up. So if I pick this and put it in there and click search, it will give me articles with what? All of the words. Some are so lazy that when they want to copy, they pick the title, ditto. You can pick it this way. Or with the exact phrase, with all of the words, the exact phrase with at least one of the words. So if I use with at least one of the words and I am not careful and I put the whole sentence there, it means that if there is an article with the word room in it, it will return it. That's too wide. So I can just pick my keywords and say it should give me articles with the keywords in it. I can also do without. So recruitment without what? Selection. It shouldn't give me anything selection. If I am at an advanced stage of my work, especially PhD, you have now reached 30 years or 2.5 years into the PhD. It means that there will be artists in your field, you just know them off head. It will come naturally. If you are doing procurement, there will be artists in procurement that by your second year, you will know them. Management, you just know them. So you want to find out if this thing that you are working, he has recently written a paper on it. So you put his name there. If you put the artist's name here and click search, all the papers the artist has written will come. And that's how the advanced, so you can also limit the years here as we indicated. You didn't know Google Scholar had advanced search. Yes. The only way you can become very familiar with this is to try them, be trying them. It doesn't, after this lecture, you won't be an expert. No, you can't. You keep trying. And there are some tricks you would learn that we don't know because of your constant trying and learning, constant trying and learning. Yes. So you will look for some artists or academics and they have no Google Scholar profile. What does it say about them? A scholar, professor, no Google Scholar profile. Eh? Eh? No, you can't be born before a computer when you are saying they were born before computers. Yes. Interestingly, these days, academics do that to each other a lot. This is not part of literature review anyway. Yeah, Googling each other. And as you embark on your literature review, you are going to be doing that of many people. You will do it unconsciously. You will just, so this guy, so that's how literature review is. So let me search this guy. Or you go and put somebody's name in the advanced search to see why here. It will list. If he hasn't done anything, you'll see. Yeah. Huh? Nothing will come. Now, remember we looked at about 9 databases, Google Scholar being the one that encompasses almost all of them. You will find other, I bet you will find other databases. And these databases will contain papers which we mostly will refer to as predatory. So for all the databases we indicated, they are very, very credible. They are not after your money per se, but they are scholarly in nature. And because of that, they are very rigorous. So if you are going to submit a paper, we in the business school will tell you that if your paper doesn't fall within a particular criteria, we will not allow you to send it there. Because some databases are out there. If you send a paper right now, tomorrow they will say that your paper is accepted. Pay $300, $50. Please hear me. I'm not saying that when you pay for a paper to be published, it is wrong. But mostly, the papers are not thoroughly peer reviewed. So if you are now going to do your literature review, the difficulty you would face would be which paper to consider as genuine and which paper to consider as predatory. You can easily do this, identify the predatory ones if they don't come within the databases we have indicated. Huh? If they don't come there, I don't want to mention any predator, but you will find them. Sometimes too, even just the way the paper is formatted, you know that this paper is not good. The way it's formatted, you just know that it's not good. You go to the website and you know that no, this is not good. Limit yourself to the databases we have identified. If you are going to do literature review, your literature must come from there. If you are going to rely on Google Scholar, remember Google Scholar indexes everything. It doesn't care whether it is predatory or what, genuine. It doesn't care. It will index it. In fact, you may find predatory papers that are highly cited. It doesn't mean those papers are seminal. It means other predatory people also relied on it. Are you getting it? This is a very thin, yes. You have to be very careful. The papers you rely on for your literature review, you can suffer. And your supervisor will just say, but what kind of papers are these? They are all what? Predatory. So that is why universities spend a lot of money paying for subscriptions for what? This database, access to this database. So you go to the library and ask for access, on-campus access and off-campus access, and you'll be able to find your literature, whether Taylor and Francis, Emerald, or whatever, you will find it. But Google Scholar is going to be your friend from now on. But you tread what? Cautiously, because a lot of predatory papers are found in them. So for us in business, the papers that are published either, yes. You want to ask for, okay. It won't be in the database. Yes. So for instance, UDS has the Journal of Development Studies. You won't find it in Emerald, you won't find it there. But does it mean it's predatory? No. So he's saying that institutional-based journals, some of them are very, very credible. But we are also aware of institutional journals which are created for individual reasons. Some group of professors want to be promoted, so they create a journal. They help each other review each other's work, 3 or 4 papers, they put it together and publish, and yeah. So look, because of collusion, that is why sometimes we suspect some of these journals, because people can easily collude and get papers thrown out as properly published. That doesn't mean that the Taylor and Francis and the others, there's no collusion. Those guys too, there's collusion. As we go on, you will see how the collusion can occur. Yes, because I am aware that sometimes you want to publish in a high-ranked journal, and because they struggle for reviewers, the people they will send to blindly to review, they struggle. So they can ask the author to suggest reviewers. If you are in that position, who would you suggest? You suggest your friend. But they tell you that suggesting someone doesn't mean that they will send the paper to him. Maybe another person too has suggested, so they'll send it to that person. But sometimes they can be so hard-pressed that they will send it to your friend. It happens. So for your PhD, you may be lucky. And you send your paper and they send add, and you add your friend, your colleague PhD student. And then he's gone like that, top rank. But that doesn't mean that the reviews alone are the criteria by which your paper may pass. Editorial review is also there. Okay. So this particular lecture will not end until you finish your MPhil or your PhD. That is the nature of literature review. You will come across other things, and I know some of you will confront me and ask me, but this thing, I've now seen this. That is the lecture still what? Going on. Yes, so I will give you the slides, which has an extensive coverage of how you can use Google Scholar and all the other things we have discussed. Yes. So on the side, we may have to organize maybe seminars. We have been discussing about it. And as to whether the seminars will be paid for or free is an issue. It's not going to be class. It's an issue we would thoroughly discuss to see how we can do that and do it well. Because you need to learn how to use a Mendeley or EndNote. You need to know how to use it before you even start your literature review. But it's not part of the course outline. Yes. So maybe we'll organize something. We can ask for some materials from Mendeley. They can give us some learning materials, and then we can organize it. And then, yeah, it can be good. Will you be willing to pay? When it comes to the pay, nobody wants to. Yes, yes. So, yes. Yeah, so other seminars many other seminars will come up, and it will not be compulsory, but it will be essential. Yes. Which one? Which one? Include, okay. She's saying there are other things. Include patents. What's a patent? What's a patent? Anybody who can explain patent? Please. Patent. Yeah. So Google Scholar indexes patents that are owned by some other people. Usually we don't check it because it's not an academic paper. That's why mostly by default it's not checked. But if you are searching, if you are doing law or something and you want to refer to some patent, you can check. That's why it has been left. It has been left unchecked. We don't include it. Yes. Last one. You can also sort by date. Yeah, this one. Look at it. I just click sort by date, activity theory. It has given me a paper which Google Scholar Index, how many days ago? 3 days ago. 3 days ago. Yeah. So you see how you can look for what? Very recent literature. Apart from customizing your range, you can just flip it and sort by date. The default is always sort by what? Relevance, but you can also sort by date. I think we are all tired now. Yes. Yes. As you are tired and you are asking questions. Next slide. You can ask. All right. Buddha, you are tired. Those online. Oh. The thing even stopped and you stopped and but I can't find them. Hmm? Okay. The Monday. Okay, I'll share it. Well, what? My everything has vanished. So stop.